Happy Friday afternoon and welcome after day one of the Breeders' Cup. We're going to look at day two coming up here in a second. And Georgie, I have to say, I guess day one would let's say it would be the Euro domination on the turf is what stood out to me. How about yourself?
Yeah, that was great. And the other highlight to me was Forte beating Cave Rock. That was pretty impressive as well. I thought one of the more impressive races. But yeah, domination from these foreigners are just incredible. I mean, the European horses on the grass, and these are not even their first string. They got better horses in the barn. These are like their second string is kicking our butt all over the place.
Yeah, Gino, they pretty much put the American horses away on the turf races. As far as Cave Rock, I think he was kind of ran his race maybe beforehand. He was really geared up, ended up dueling with a 50-1 shot on the front end and paid the price late. Take nothing away from Forte, but what were your thoughts?
Michelle, you made a great point on that. On the feed right before they were going into the gate too, she compared the two of them, Cave Rock and Forte, just the body language and how they were traveling going in. Michelle does a great job with that, like giving her paddocks analysis a lot of the times because she really knows what horses kind of look like and comfortability and stuff. And I thought that was a great note leading right in. She said, just look at the two of them, compare the two, Forte to Cave Rock, and look at how Cave Rock is and look at how Forte is really comfortable. Just a nice note from her there. Ready to rock and roll for tomorrow, though. We'll do it all over again. And I do think tomorrow in some of the turf races, the U.S. horses will have a little bit better shot to compete. I feel like the turf races that we'll talk about aren't quite as strong, but they're competitive. So I think that may give some of the U.S. based horses a little bit better shot.
Skippy, we ready to put day one in the rearview mirror and move on to day two?
We are, buddy. I'm so glad we didn't do this seminar yesterday because I would have given out nothing but losers. So, but the bright side about this whole thing, back in 2008, I had my best day ever at the track. And that was the first time they did the Friday card and the Saturday card. And the Friday card, I got murdered. I came home with a little voucher, and I took it to the track the next day, Saturday, and I had the best day I've ever had at the track. So I'm trying to keep that positive mind attitude. I don't have a voucher, but I'm ready to go tomorrow. I got a good feeling.
All right, well, good things here to come, and let's go over all these Breeders' Cup races. We won't make it too long. We've got quite a bit to cover. Let's start in race 3 at Keeneland. That's the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint. It looks like a wide open race. Skip, I'm going to start with you just because our old friend Cece is back in again. 11 for 22 lifetime win machine. And then you go to the outside. You've got a horse like Echo Zulu, who's only 5 for 5 lifetime. And yet there seems to be no standout whatsoever in this race.
No, there doesn't. This race is very tough, as most of the races tomorrow are. There's only a couple that I thought that, possibly singles, that the logical horses. This obviously was not one of them. We're a big fan of CC. Our buddy Michael McCarthy trains this horse. It's a defending champion. There looks like a lot of speed in there. I think she's going to get a great trip. The one that I kind of got my eye on also is number 11, Wicked Halo. Now, this horse is 2 for 2 at the summer meet. It took a break off in July, came back in September at Saratoga, won a game race, came back at Keeneland in the Raven Run, the grade 2. And wow, it put a move on the turn and just drew off and won by 4 easy lengths. This horse is coming into the race the right way. I know that was only a couple weeks ago, but this horse is sharp. It came back with a nice, easy, slow breeze on the 31st on Halloween. And this horse at 10-1 is definitely going to be on my ticket.
So 10-1 on Wicked Halo. We could go a lot of different ways, and that's another gun runner for Winchell Thoroughbreds there. He seems to have runner after runner. Yeah, go ahead, Skip.
I wanted to mention one thing. I didn't mention Goodnight Olive, the Chad Brown. This horse is sharp. It's won 6 out of 5, and a little birdie told me, out of all of Chad Brown's horses that have been training, this is the one that's training the best going into his Breeders' Cup horses. So Goodnight Olive is the one that he thought was training the best out of the rest of them.
Well, we like it when the little birdie speaks in your ear. Hopefully that'll be correct.
Yes.
Gino, You could go many different ways in here. One thing that we've noticed, I think, Keeneland seems to be a little bit Del Marish, whereas horses for courses, if they run well in the past there, they run well there again. Kind of a different type of track. Have you noticed that in the past, Gino?
Yeah, I think so. And I agree that in this particular race, it looks like there's a lot of speed. I'm not quite sure if CC is the same as she was maybe last year or kind of at her best. And she could still fall into winning this race, but I probably won't be using her all that much. I very much like Obligatory in here. I think Obligatory is going to get the exact type of trip we're looking for in this race. Now, if you look at her last start on August the 28th, Obligatory was in a really tough ballerina, and she finished behind Goodnight Olive. And she was last in that race, and she was about 6 lengths off. She started to roll. And when she tipped to the outside, a horse right in front of her, like, bolted, and she got stuck. She was like right behind the horse as soon as she started rolling, and she kind of had to stop and then start up all over again. And she was really good that day. That was a strong race. She actually beat CC in that race, and that was behind Goodnight Olive, but she got stopped. And I think she's going to sit back. She's going to make one late run, and she's just going to come launching from way out of it. A horse who I had to mention at a price, Chain of Love has a shot in here, guys. The Japanese horse. We saw last year when they came to the Breeders' Cup, they were serious. They were legit. If you look at this mare, she faced the boys in the Golden Shaheen and in a really good sprint race on the undercard of the Saudi Cup. And she's competed with the boys at top levels. She absolutely has the class, because when horses like this come over, a lot of times we don't know how good the horses they've been competing are against, right? That's the issue. It's who have they been facing? Well, we can use those races as a measuring stick. When she's right there, she was right behind Dr. Chevelle, who was like your second choice in the Breeders' Cup Sprint last year. You know, and she's facing the fillies and mares in here. I think she has a legitimate shot in this race, and she'll be on some tickets for me too. Yeah, it's a fun one. I guess I'll mention one more in Echo Zulu. There's a lot of speed, but she's drawn well in a race like this because she can use that speed, and if she needs to sit a little bit, I think at this distance she can. Those three will be in the start of exotics for me for sure.
So we're kind of all over the board, but this is a wide open race. Georgie, what do the numbers say? You are the sheets guru of the foursome here. What are you looking at on the numbers?
Well, first of all, we got a new intern working here in the marketing department, Lupita. Her name is Lupita, and she is the exercise rider for Whitey McCarthy. So she tells me that this is Cece's last race. Cece's retiring after this race, so this will be her swan song. And you know, they're not overly confident that she's going to win, and so yeah, I'm not too confident either. I think I'm going to be betting $309 in this race, and I'll get to the 309 in a minute. But Chain of Love, that guy Buick, did he look great today or what? The jockey on Chain of Love, man, he looked fantastic. He made all the right moves. But I'm going to be betting on Goodnight Olive. I like Goodnight Olive. That little birdie, gets around. That little birdie came to my ear as well. And I'm going to be using Goodnight Olive with Obligatory for the same reasons that that you mentioned there, Gino. Chain of Gold, just like Buick, his Thorograph numbers are really strong. The one in Maidan was strong, and Frank's Rocket is good too. So I'm going to go 8765 and bet 309.
Well done there, George. 8675309, as we know, and I think this is a spread race. I'm going to spread here. One thing we all know, all you have to do is be right one time on Breeders' Cup Day, especially if you single a price, and you could make up for all the losses we had today, and we're looking to do that. So let's move on to race 4, Gino, the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. Where you're looking at in the second leg of the Breeders' Cup races.
I'm going to try to beat Golden Pal here, so I'm going to spread out and toss him completely. I think a lot of people will single him. He fly, and honestly, it's a little bit of just taking a stand. And honestly, it's because I like that this race is early in the card. If this race was like the 9th race in the middle of every exotic, I might have a hard time doing that. But you know what? If I get knocked out right away being aggressive here, I don't mind. I can come right back in the next race, and there's plenty of exotics left for me. But I don't think Golden Pal is quite as good as he might have been before. He's still really fast out of the gate. This is a pretty tough group, though. He's facing some legitimate horses that ship in that all have a pretty good amount of like pressing speed. I don't know how many can keep up with him early, maybe one or two, but I think right behind him, there's going to be another nice flight of horses. He's run well at Keeneland, but last year in the Breeders' Cup, remember, it was 5. So if he gets a little bit more pressure and he's a little bit more leg weary late, I'm going to spread out in here. So horses that will definitely be on my radar that I'll be using. The other Wesley Ward, Campanelli, I actually think could sit a trip. If he gets beat, it's probably because, he gets a little bit too leg weary and someone's coming from off the pace. I thought the 6 obviously is very, very logical shipping in. Highfield Princess has won 3 consecutive Group 1 races at the absolute top levels. I'll throw in the 13, Cazadero, who I think is a little bit intriguing. This is a horse who was really good early on at 2. He won the Bashford Manor, which is like the first graded stakes races for 2-year-olds. And so he was like the real buzzy horse early on. And then he tailed off a little bit and they put him on the grass and it was like he found a new home on the turf. I think he's a little bit intriguing. But for me, I don't really have an issue spreading out in here because I'm chucking Golden Pal. That's kind of my my main analysis for this one. Keep in mind, Brand has been scratched. I thought he would have been probably a horse that I would have used maybe on a ticket or two, but spread, chuck the chalk for me.
I'm gonna get to you in 1 second, Skip, and I wish I had it in front of me. There was a stat that and I don't know what this means, but the horses shipping in from Kentucky Downs are like over their last 48 in the Breeders' Cup. Now Braun is scratched, but keep that in mind. I wish I had that. Somebody tweeted it yesterday. I think I actually took a picture of it. So Skip, take a look at, or let us know what you're talking about. I'm going to try to find that on my phone as you speak.
All right, buddy. Gino, I'm with you. I know Golden Pal, 4 for 4 over the course, and has won the Breeders' Cup races at 2 and 3, and they're hoping 4, but I'm against Golden Pal. I'm all over the Euros in here. I liked Creative Force at a little bit of a price at 10-1. Its first race off the layoff, it ran really good in the Platinum Jubilee. It got beat a neck to Naval Crown. The last 2 races, not too bad. It got beat 2 and 3 lengths, but it's got the figures to go back to, the time for ratings at 120, which is right below one of the favorites, Highfield Princess, 125. Highfield Princess is definitely going to be on my ticket. That horse is in sharp form, 130. Or it's raced 30 times. It's won 12 out of the 30. And like Gino said also, grade 1, it's beating the best of the best over there. That horse is going to be on it. There's another one, Naval Crown. I'm putting on anything that Charles Appleby runs. I don't care the price or anything. When he ships over here, he wins. And they don't have to be the heavy, not the heavy favorites, but the favorites. Don't be afraid if they're 20 or 30-1 to use any of his horses. I watched all week. All of his horses look great on the track, as did Aiden O'Brien's. And I'm Naval Crown's definitely going to be on my ticket also. You go back at the start of the year, in June and July, those 2 races off the bench and the second out were really, really good. The last 2, I don't know what's going on. It's off form. It got beat 12.
Well, he doesn't like the soft turf. That's the key. So see, I think the style of the turf is really key. When it's really good soft, you see the GS there. It's not the type of turf that they like. I think they'll like this turf a little bit better. Just to kind of piggyback a point that you were mentioning, Skip, Appleby over the last 5 years, 20 for 43 in North America. He has won with 20 out of 43 starters. Wow. That's 47%. And 70% of the horses have finished in the top 3. And they don't, there might be 2 allowance races on that out of the 40. They're not shipping in to run in allowance races. They're all running in grade 1 races and Breeders' Cup races. So it's pretty incredible. And you kind of compare that to Aiden O'Brien, who had a little bit of success today, but prior to that was 8 for his last 125. With horses out here. And those are the same sort of thing, like a lot of short prices in big races that burn a lot of money. So just something at least worth mentioning.
No, absolutely.
Go ahead, George. Or go ahead, Skip.
The one American horse that I'm going to use, and listen, Golden Pal's going to be on a ticket or two, but I'm just trying to beat him. Casa Creed, shortening back up. I wish this race was 6 furlongs instead of 5.5. This horse, back in June in the Jupiter, great Jiper. I always mess up the name. But anyways, that horse won very impressive. Then in the 4-star Dave at Saratoga, wow, that was a giant race. Really, really good. So I think this horse with Sias on the outside, all of Mott's horses have looked good in the morning. I think out of the American horses, this is the one that I like the most.
All right, Georgie, what do the numbers say? Are you going back to Golden Pal, or are you going to go to Applebee's for some food and some winners?
Yeah, I'm going with the best thoroughgraph number, the second most money earned by any of these, and that's going to be number 11, Casa Creed. Casa Creed, I am telling you what, everybody, just year in and year out, you see it, 5.5 furlongs, they go, you got to have speed. Closers win a lot of 5.5 furlong races. I mean, because these runners that go out to lead, they just go out there blazing, guns a-blazing, and it sets up a lot of times for a closer. The only runner in the race that's won more money than Casa Creed is Golden Pal, but Golden Pal's going to have a lot of competition early on in the race. Casa Creed, Luis Saez is riding so great. I love Casa Creed in this spot. I like Highfield Princess. And yeah, I like TGI Fridays. I like Chili's. But Applebee's is the place to eat this weekend. No question about it.
Well, I'll tell you what, one thing, we talked about all of these races. It only takes one, but Breeders' Cup is not for the faint of heart as well, because with these huge fields, yes, you're going to get prices, but boy, it's all about the trip. And you got to work out a trip. And so many times you're going to get caught in trouble, and some other horse gets the perfect trip, or the jockey makes the perfect move at the right time. And timing is everything in these kind of races. So you got to get a little luck on your side, Skipper.
And you know what, Chappie? You always want to bet the best jockeys, but most of the time the horses, obviously you got to have the horse underneath you to win the race, but the jockey's got to put the horse in the right position. And some of these, sometimes they take them too far back and just get them where they can't get up in time. Give the horse a shot, a chance to win the race. Put that horse into the race, get it in position, whether it's saving ground or whatever. And, more times than not, the best things you could do in Breeders' Cup is jockeys got a huge, huge role. That's why, I always make sure I bet the best jockeys in the Breeders' Cup, because they always put the horses in the right place.
That's for sure. And luckily we have the best of the best. And let's move on to race 5, which is the Big Ass Fans Breeders' Cup.
Whoa.
Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile.
We're on Santa Anita. Isn't it funny? There's always a horse's name or two sometimes where you're like, am I allowed to say that horse's name? There's some of them out there where you're like, I can say that on the air, right? Right?
Yeah. Like Hoof-Hearted. A key scratch in here of the 6 Laurel River for Bob Baffert. Georgie, let's start with you. It only seems appropriate to start with you in the Big Ass Fans Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Where are you heading here?
I'm gonna go with the Big Ass favorite.
That? Is it? Were you saying he's big ass or Big Ass Fans? Right? Where do you stop? What the description of Georgie there? Right?
Take that however you might.
I'm gonna go with Cody's Wish. Cody's Wish comes in by far the best thoroughgraph numbers. Easily the best thoroughgraph number of the last race. Pipeline was the closest one in thoroughgraph numbers, and that's because Pipeline comes out of that same race. It was just a fast race. The 4-go at Saratoga. As Skip mentioned, the Billy Mott trainees have been looking fantastic in workouts of late. All his runners have been looking great, and this one's on a roll. He's won 3 in a row, won 6 out of the last 7, and the other race just missed by a neck. He's got a good story behind him as well. Great, a great post position, great workouts. He's just looking fantastic. I like Cody's Wish a lot, and I guess I'm going to go with Pipeline for second. But Cody's Wish is going to be the first favorite that I like so far here this afternoon.
All right, Cody's wish there, and there is no eating chalk on this day. Maybe when we get to the final race, but that doesn't count. But for now, are you looking towards the favorite as well, Skipper? Or are you heading in another direction?
You know, I liked Laurel River the best. Now that he's out, Cody Wish could be tough, and what a great story that is. I was watching, like I said, all morning, at breakfast at Keeneland or Breeders' Cup, and the story around this horse is amazing. But I'm going to take a little shot here. I like Senor Buscador. This horse has won 4 out of 7. Everybody didn't think it could get 2 turns. I think this horse can. It's proved that it can. And at 10-1 or 12-1, I think this horse has got a big, big shot in here. So I like the 10. You can't leave out Cyberknife. Cyberknife is trained well. Brad Cox has got it. Giroux's on it. I think they're going to put this horse close to the lead. But I'm going to take a shot with Senor Buscador.
And I'll tell you one thing, a horse like Senor Buscador, I think you're going to get overlaid on that horse because of the kind of the unknown connections in such a big field. I think you get way more than 12-1. So if you have a horse like that and you happen to win, I think you're going to get rewarded handsomely. Speaking of handsome, Gino, where are you heading in this race?
Oh, yeah.
Good segue. Good segue.
Yeah, I definitely will be using Senor Buscador too. He's one of those horses where you just sort of go through his whole career and everything makes sense. Like, he's been good early on. Then he had a physical issue in the Risen Star. He was sent to the bench for a long time. He comes back after like a year and a half, and he just takes a little while to round into form. I mean, they threw him into the San Diego in his second start. That was probably a little too much for him at that point. And then in the Pat O'Brien, he actually ran really well. He was settling towards the back. He had to make an outside move. Honestly, he was in the 7 path, when he had to make his move. And Laurel River got a nice opening in between horses and then just sort of shot clear and opened up. And then what I liked about Senor Buscador in the race at Churchill, he made a nice sort of middle move all the way up, and he took the lead early. And you may have to do that at Keeneland with the way that short stretch is, right? If you're going to move, you might have to move into it early because you don't have a whole lot of time if you just want to launch your rally like at the top of the lane. So he's going to be on the tickets for me. Although I will say, with the scratch of Laurel River, it'll probably take a little bit of the speed out of this race. I don't know if there's that much speed in here, maybe like 2 or 3. We'd imagine a Gunite. I wish Gunite ran in the sprint. I honestly would have liked him in the sprint if he was in that race. I would have given him a big shot in there. Cyberknife and Simplification kind of remind me a little bit of each other. Cyberknife is a little more accomplished, but they've both been in big races going a little bit longer, and now they cut back and may have a little more punch. And Simplification might actually be able to sit a pretty good trip with a little more punch. This will probably end up being a spread out race for me because I think my strong opinion would have been Laurel River. So eliminating that probably opens this race up a little bit more for me. I don't have a problem with Cody's wish, but it's an intriguing race. I have to mention, I don't think he's good enough to win, but one of my personal favorites, shout out to my guys who do the Friday morning live streams with me, the Sniper, Barry Spears, and my buddy Matt DeSantis. We love Law Professor. He's just one of like our personal favorites. He showed up all the time. He can run on anything. He's probably a cut below the top horses, but he took it to Life is Good last time out. He really made that one work all the way. So shout out to him. I'd love to see him really like outrun his odds and run well in here.
Previously trained by a friend of the show, our man, Michael McCarthy. And with that, we move on to race 6, the Maker's Mark Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. Gino, what are you looking at here? You got a single? You're going with the Euros here? What's your take on this race?
The real key to the race, obviously, is in Italian. In Italian is the speed of the speed. In Italian is the 11 who will likely be out there on the front end. In Italian just proved that she could go 1 mile and 1/8 last time out. Now she's going to have to prove that she can go even farther. There's probably a couple others that I think can stay close enough to kind of put some pressure on her. Chappie, I had our old friend John Moosis on That's What G Said podcast to help me out with this race.
The Euro specialist.
Exactly. He was a researcher at TVG and a producer, and man, he knows international racing so well. And the thing about Moose also, he's not like a chalk player either. He'll try to look for value. He said that Nashua, he said that in this particular race, that was the horse that was pointing to this spot the entire time. That this has been the plan for a long time. And if you just sort of look at the pattern for that one, and I'm talking about the number 3 in here, Nashua, she raced and she won the Nassau in July. And then very rarely do you take some time off after winning back-to-back grade 1s, right? But they did it because they had a plan. They wanted to point to this race, came back in the Prix de l'Opera at Longchamp, and she ran exactly like a horse that needed the race would run. She ran awesome. She was sitting great. She moved to the lead. She opened up like almost 2 lengths, and then she just got a little bit weary and nailed. I think she's primed. I think she's ready to run a big one in here. And if she is like 5-2, 2-1, and doesn't get really hammered, that might be pretty nice value for her in here. Probably play a ticket where I single her, and then another one where I use the 3, 4, and the 5. I think the Euros are really the nice ones. And the 5 Tuesday might give you a little bit of value on Saturday. So, you know.
By the way, I believe John Mooses gave us a winner last year as his Euro.
Yeah. He was.
And I believe it was a price too, but it was he said one of the horses was not pointing towards this race. One was, and the
Japanese horse. It was the mare.
The Japanese horse. That is correct.
Right. Yeah, because he knew that was where the plan was all along for her. He told us about how her class, you know, in when she was other places, how it fit. And he's really, really sharp. And like I said, he seemed very high on this one. He thought Tuesday would give you maybe a little bit of value if you could get like 6-1-ish or above. But I may play, like for me, it's, you know, on these big days too, it's a lot about approach, right? How are you structuring your tickets throughout the sequences? What are you playing? Are you a try player, a super player? Or are you a pick 4, pick 5? In the early races, I'll take a shot against Golden Pal. So I can probably single here in that race, go really deep, you know, because I'm going to try to beat that horse. And then it'll give me a little bit of coverage in the other races. So this will probably be one of the shorter prices that I like to really key in on throughout the Saturday.
Skippy, we saw the Euros dominate today, but I know you're a huge fan of In Italian. You've been all over that horse several times with some nice scores at prices as well. So are you leaning that way, or you giving a bigger look towards the Euros this time?
You know, like you said, I'm a fan of In Italian. Ever since she won or ran second at Tampa Bay Downs, I just said this horse is going to be one of Chad Brown's next really nice turf horses. I just love the way that she moves. She's just a little thing, but she's got a big stride. She's got that speed. I mean, she's so quick out of the gate. I don't know if she could go this far. I think that she can. She's going to be on my ticket, but I'm a big fan of Nashua too. Those are the only 2 that I really like in this race. I'm using both. I don't have much to say because Gino just said it. So I don't want to, repeat what he said. I'm using the 11 In Italian and number 3 Nashua, and I like Nashua better than In Italian. You know, I went back and watched the workouts for In Italian, and back like a month ago, she worked so good. Her ears were up, her head was straight. Her last work, it was around the dogs. The last one wasn't the good one that I was telling you about. She didn't work bad, but her head was kind of cocked sideways a little bit. And she didn't look as good to me as she did going into the fast lady or first lady grade 1. So I'm going to go with Nashua, and In Italian's also going to be on my ticket. I will tell you one bomb that I'm going to also use, and that's going to be Toy, the 7. I'm throwing this horse in. This horse looked good in the mornings. It caught my eye. And so at 20-1, I got to put that one on my ticket also.
All right, Georgie, the numbers, how do they translate from the Euros to the Americans as far as the sheets, George? Pretty much the same thing, or is it I do not know that answer.
Yeah, well, there are numbers for the foreign horses. There's Thurgraph numbers, and generally they run a little bit better when they get here to the United States. So whatever the number is over there, I always kind of give them a point or 2 and expect them to run better. And this is a race where I was like Abbott and Costello, in the old Who's on First, because my friends would ask me, who do you like Saturday? I said, I'm going to win on Tuesday. They go, yeah, but what about Saturday? So I'm going to win on Tuesday. And then they stop talking to me. They get upset. But it's because I'm betting number 5 Tuesday. And that's why I like number 5 Tuesday. Aidan O'Brien, he's fantastic. One of the best trainers in the world. And this one here, Tuesday beat Nashua. Tuesday was second to Alpinista, ran a 6 on the thoroughgraph sheets. Alpinista went on to win the Arc de Triomphe. So, I mean, Tuesday is a stud. She is just she's a filly, but she's wonderful. Moore is great. I think that last race against Nashua, it just was not a fantastic race for Tuesday, but you're going to get a fantastic price. She beat Emily Upjohn that day that she beat Nashua, who had all kinds of troubles, but Tuesday won. And Tuesday, I like Tuesday's numbers. The best overall thoroughgraph numbers actually belong to the 9 Rogier. Chad Brown, Pratt teaming up, and in a race where there's seemingly a lot of speed, Rogier is a good closer, and you got Pratt. He's just phenomenal. So is Chad Brown. So I'm going to go Dolly Parton. I'm going to go 9-5. Those are the two I'm concentrating on.
So far, Georgie's gone 9-5.
And he was singing Happy Days, Sunday, Monday, Happy Days, Tuesday,
8675309.
Saturday, what a day.
Gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. So
we're cruising all week with George.
All I can tell is anybody listening to this show, extra credit to the 3, because John Moose's, shout out to him. I'm sure he's not watching. He's probably watching Notre Dame highlights before the game tomorrow, but he knows his Euro stuff.
Yeah,
so
he does.
When he speaks, he's like E.F. Hutton. I pay a little extra attention because I listen. So speaking of listening, who's up next? Let's go to the Qatar Racing Breeders' Cup Sprint. Georgie, Tuesday is 3 days from now. Who do you like tomorrow in the Breeders' Cup Sprint?
Nicely done. Nicely done.
Here in the big ass Qatar Racing, just the Qatar. I'm sorry, it's just the Qatar. In the Qatar, I'm telling you, is one of my. I got a couple of bets that I'm going to really be hammering, and this is one of them. I love this runner, and by far the best thoroughgraph numbers. I know you're not going to believe me when I say it, but the best thoroughgraph numbers belong to number 2, Kamari. Kamari just ran a -3. A -3 is just on fire. And Wesley Ward, he's great in these sprint races. So Kamari's going to be a big bet for me. Jackie's Warrior is going to be 3-5. And I think that Jackie's Warrior can be beat. Cody's Wish beat that one last time. I'm going to try to beat him again today to start the pick 5. I'm singling Kamari.
Singling Kamari against one of not the biggest favorite on the day, but one of the biggest favorites. Clearly, we know who's going to be the biggest favorite on the day. But is there any speed, Skipper, to go with Jackie's Warrior early, who's going to be 2-5, 3-5 in here? I think maybe people are hoping that Super Ocho, who can certainly show speed, but Barrios isn't exactly a send rider, although he did a couple back. But that's the key here, right? Does someone pressure Jackie's Warrior early?
100% the key. And, last race, Super Ocho broke on top, and then he kind of took back with this horse, which I was surprised. I don't think he does that today. I think he goes. I got my little nephew. I feel like I'm camping. It's so dark in here. I wasn't prepared. I got a candle. That was my little nephew, Coda. Zenyatta is right there on her bed. I'm in her room. I'm boring her. She's asleep. But I got a long shot in here that I like. I'm hoping that somebody goes out with Jackie's Warrior. Willie Boy with Chantel, this horse on the outside, she's not going to let Jackie's Warrior get away. She's going to be right on Jackie's Warrior's hip. And I hope that they put a little pressure on one another. I like number 3, Obesos. I've been a big fan of this horse for a long time. I gave it out on the show to win the Kentucky Derby at 41-1 and ran really good. It only got beat 5 lengths that day. But this horse, I've always thought it's a better sprinter than it is a route horse. And last time they gave it a little break. It comes off the break, and it had a wide trip. It finished fast and strong and won in a game fashion. I like the way that it galloped out, and it's 2 for 2 at the distance. I think at a big price in the sprint, I like number 3, Obesos, 20-1, and I think we might even get more than that.
Well, last year who we liked, and we were rewarded handsomely, is we were all over Aloha West, who won at 11-1 last year. Gino, do you have a price, or is Jackie's Warrior a lone speed single here at a low number?
And I hate what they did here, because this is the 7th race. So this is the last race from the early pick 5 and the start of the late pick 5. Like, this is the most important race on the entire card.
Right.
If you're playing any rolling exotics. And this is like one of the least intriguing races. I honestly, this is not a strong renewal of the Breeders' Cup Sprint at all. And what hurts it is that the horses who would have been the 2nd and 3rd choice in here aren't running. Jack Christopher the other day recently pulled out of here, and Gunite's running in the Dirt Mile, where, maybe he could win that race, but I think he would be like a really, really top contender in here. And so now, like, I really don't know who pushes Jackie's Warrior. Do I want to beat this horse? Absolutely. Jackie's Warrior has been your beaten favorite in 2 Breeders' Cup races already. In the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and then last year in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, which, to be honest, on paper, wasn't very strong either. Like, handicapping that race, it wasn't all that strong last year. I just don't know who's the one that puts the pressure on him. I always want to say her with Jackie's Warrior. And what worries me about Kamari is she gets like the most perfect trips when she wins her races. She just sits like right off a length or 2 in the perfect spot. Is she going to get that trip in here? Like, I don't know if she's that fast. She might be 4 or 5 lengths behind, and that might be a little bit different for her. This is the hardest race for me to figure out what I want to do. And it's, like I said, it's in the worst spot like all day, because it's like a really important race. I like Elite Power. I just don't like the way the race shapes up for him. He's peaking. He's improving. He won one of the most soft versions of the Vosburg in history. And it was so slow early. That way he just sat right on the lead. Like, he has no speed, but he actually looks a little bit faster because he sat close in that last race. He won't be close early in here. And that's sort of the problem. And, the more I kind of talk through this race, a horse who I will have for sure in some way, shape, or form is our West Coast horse, American Theorem. Because
I was just going to bring up after you were done.
I just wish he would have had a race, a prep. Like, I wish he would have had the recent prep in October, before the sprint prep, before this, because it might be a little tough for him off the bench. I mean, he did fire fresh before, but I don't know how strong the fields he was facing were in his last 3. But if you're just looking at figures, they stack up pretty well. And it's sort of hard to knock the pattern for him. Like, he's always been a good sprinter. So I start eliminating a lot of other horses in this race, and I kind of start elevating American Theorem a little bit more. He'll be on some tickets with me, and Jackie's Warrior will too. I sound so defeated, just talking about this race, because I want to come up like, let's go, let's find it, favorite, I got you. But I just, it's hard for me on paper to get there in this race. It really is.
Well, shout out to our man, Georgie Papapadromo. We're always rooting for him. And I think they've always been high on that horse. They finally figured out the horse is a much better late running sprinter than a router. That's for sure. So might need some pace, but that horse is doing very well and ran second to a horse we would all liked very much in Laurel River, who has been scratched. So, all right, let's move on to the FanDuel Breeders' Cup Mile presented by the PDJF. Georgie, what are you thinking here?
Well, I want to bet Modern Games, and Modern Games can certainly win, but they may not let us bet. We might win without, being able to bet on them. So I don't know what they're doing, how they're going to play that. But this is a race to me, and especially on thoroughgraph numbers, that I'm using 9 of them. It's the most competitive race, I think, of the entire card. I can make a case for so many of these. Kinross, I love Kinross, the Tory aboard. And that one's got some stellar numbers. Domestic Spending's got great numbers. Modern Games is undefeated here in the United States. That one's good. Looks even Mike McCarthy's runner looks great. The one I like the best is 10-1, number 11, Annapolis. Annapolis is on a roll, and that last race was a breakthrough performance for this Todd Pletcher trainee. Irad Ortiz, he wins a lot of these races, and if this one doesn't bounce off that last race, at 10-1, I think Annapolis is one of the most likely runners that can win this race. But it's a race where I'm spreading like crazy. I like Annapolis, Dream Loper, Modern, just a wide open race. But boy, if Annapolis runs back to that last race, I think he's going to be tough to beat.
George taking his little shot at the stewards in the last year for the ruling on Modern Games. Is this a spread for you, Gino, or you narrowed it down here?
Well, here's my best bet of the weekend, in that if you take a shot every time someone mentions Modern Games last year and that you couldn't bet, you'll be pretty drunk by the end of the day tomorrow, because that's going to be talked about all over the place. I think Robert Geller had it in his call in the Woodbine race when he won and he crushed. He said, and you can bet on him today. You know, he actually said
Oh my God,
right at the end of the race. So there's my best bet. If Modern Games is over 8-5, I will be surprised. I think he's going to get hit pretty hard. I think that was kind of a generous morning line. He has been really good in his races here in the U.S. I mean, that Woodbine Mile was incredible. I think he likes the firmer courses just a little bit more. I think it really plays to him. And in his last race, he wasn't bad. What ended up happening is he just kind of couldn't get by the front runner. It was this horse, and he never really looked like he was going to get by, and he just sort of passed the horse late. But he was sitting in a good spot, and the horse up front was just really stubborn, and he just kept going a little bit, and finally, with his class, Modern Games wore that horse down for second. But he's good. I think he's legit. George mentioned the 11, who absolutely makes a lot of sense in here. He's only lost twice. One of his losses came in his first start in like 7 months at Penn National on a weird race course. It was super soft. It was all rainy. He lost to an 88-1 shot that day, a horse who just sort of snuck up the rail and then like kept going. And then his other loss came to Nation's Pride, who might be the second choice in the Breeders' Cup Turf. So he's not really done a whole lot wrong. He sat a nice trip last time. And what I kind of like about him is that he's not one of those horses whose only wins are sitting cozy trips. He's actually showed that if he gets shuffled back and he has to come from out of it, he can also do that. So I think he's a player. And then the other Euro that I would use would be the 3, Dream Loper, who is a super miler type. Like, this is a really nice trip for that one. 1.25 mile races are a little bit too far. If you just key in on the races at like 1 mile and 1 1/8 miles, they're excellent. If Chad Brown wins this race with domestic spending off a 15-month break from post 14, like, man, that is just impressive. Because, and to make it even more, it's probably not even domestic spending's preferred distance. What makes it hard for domestic spending, he's kind of a tweener. The turf is too long for him at 1.5 miles, and 1 mile is probably a little shorter than where he's best. He's really like 1.125 miles type horse. But if he gets this job done here, that is just an incredible job. I don't know if I can bet him, but yeah, I would be surprised if Modern Games is giving us any value. If he's over 2-1, that actually might represent pretty good value on him.
You're cutting out a little bit there. Yeah, I agree with two things there, Skipper. Modern Games is going to get absolutely hammered at the windows. I've been such a giant fan of domestic spending, but off that layoff and that bad post, I don't know what to do there. That horse has got a monstrous turn of foot, but he's going to need it today in a wide open race. Or is Modern Games just that good, Skipper?
Modern Games is probably my best bet. It's going to be lower than 7-2. That's a very generous morning line. It probably will go off 2-1, and I'll be very happy at 2-1. This horse, I saw that last race, and I know exactly what Gino said. This horse obviously wants the firm ground. It comes over here and it wins last year's Breeders' Cup Juve Terminal or Turf, and then we all know what happened there. It comes back in the Woodbine Mile, and that race was so impressive. I know that's only around one turn, but it just destroyed those horses, and it made them look like they were standing still. Everybody that I've been hearing, well, why did they ship it back, to Great Britain and run at Ascot? Why didn't they just keep it out here after that big race? That doesn't bother me at all. Look who the trainer is, Charles Appleby. He knows exactly what he's doing. I love this horse today. It's probably my best bet of the weekend. I'm keying everything around Modern Games. That's why I'm hoping to catch like Obesos and the sprint at 20-1. I'm just keying everything around Modern Games, and hopefully I'm right. If I had to use another one, it would be the other Euro, the 3. This mare, boy, that last race was really, really impressive. And obviously a mile is her best distance, but I'm a huge fan of Modern Games, and that's my single.
Yeah, I think Modern Games, like you said, is crushed in the 2 lifetime starts here, likes the firmer ground. The race before the Woodbine Mile ran second to Baid, who's an absolute monster. Yes, just got beat the other day, but it's now, I think the horse is just a little bit over the top. All right, we got a couple races left. And by the way, I'm rooting for Domestic Spending. That's been one of my favorite horses of all time. All right, let's move on to race 9. I will bet anyone $1. I say that Malathat goes off as the favorite over Nest in here. Does anyone want to take that bet?
I will.
Okay, I think that bet.
Yeah, I think just off reputation, and I don't really love Nest all that much, honestly, in this race. What's funny about this race, Chappie, is I'll give a shout out to my friend Emily Gullickson. She does work for Optics EQ. She kind of made this point. The Classic and the Distaff are kind of similar in that I think Nest and Flightline will deal with the same issues in the races, whether you love them or don't. Nest will probably be facing the 3 best horses she's ever faced in her life, all in the same race, all who can do different things, right? And that will be the same thing for Flightline in the Classic. If we look at who's Flightline's facing, he's going to probably be facing the best, the second best, and maybe the 3rd best horses he's ever faced. One of them speedy, one of them can come from the back, one of them kind of sit. That's my issue with Nest in here. I think she ends up getting caught up trying to chase Society, and that puts her in a bad spot. If you look into Clairiere, and she's a little bit less tactical than the rest of the field because you know what you need from Clairiere. She's going to come closing. But look at her races this year. She starts, she wins easily. She comes back in the Apple Blossom. She loses to Latruska, who just gets the lead that day. And then following that, all of the best fillies and mares at that point, like the older, were in the Ogden Phipps. That was a great race. She beat them all right on the square. She comes back again in the Chuvy, beats them all on the square again. Then in the Personal Ensign on August the 27th, she's bouncing around in the gate before the race starts. She's fractious. She knocks her head. She bites her tongue. She just does not fire. And then we don't see her since. If we were talking about the Breeders' Cup Distaff on August the 26th, we would have probably said she was going to be favored in this race. And now, since then, she had one race that was a complete excuse, and she's fresh. Does the race set up for her? Maybe. She needs a little bit of speed, right? If Society stretches them out, can somebody push Society? But from just a value-based standpoint, if she is like 4-1 in a competitive race, I've always been a fan of her. Like, I really think that she is maybe the most talented of the age group, and she might offer us some value in here. I think it's a good spot for Clairiere, but it's a really cool race. Like, it's not the Distaff and the Classic aren't one of these 14-horse fields, but who are they missing in this race? Like, who else would you want in this race to make it? They're as good as they could be, honestly. This came up sharp. You've got some of the cool older horses versus the Kentucky Oaks winner in Secret Oath, a really sharp 3-year-old in Society, and then Nest, who was your runner-up in the Belmont and has just trounced horses, and then they got to face some cool older horses. This is what Breeders' Cup races were supposed to be, when they were created, like this and like what the Classic is this year.
Very, very terrific field. And Georgie, what do the numbers say? Somebody stand out here, or a pretty wide open race?
A couple of them stand out, but this is going to be my best bet of the day. I think Flightline, the most probable winner of the day, but my best bet of the day is going to be number 8, Society. Society, at this stage of the year, like early on in the year, 3-year-olds have a tough time competing against 4-year-olds, but we're in November already. So the 3-year-old, 4-year-old difference doesn't bother me. You look at Society, the only race that Society lost, She stumbled at the start, ran up, dueled, and paid the price for it. Other than that, she would be undefeated. She's won 5 out of 6. She's got more speed than any of these. She's speed kills in every track USA, and I love Society. 6-1 in the morning line. We might get that. You got Malathat, you got Clairiere, Nest, even Search Results is going to get a lot of money. I think Society is going to run them off their feet, and I think she's going to be in front and playing catch me if you can. I love Society. My best bet of the afternoon.
George is a man of the people. He loves Society, and he thinks it's Lone Speed. Skipper, what are you thinking? Skip, you look like you're in the like a 1980s camping horror movie where somebody's going to come in and slash you at the end of the night with a pickaxe or something.
Yeah. That's how I feel.
Halloween Skip starring.
I'm expecting a guy with like a hockey mask or a clown.
They're gonna put a pillowcase over Skip's head, and they're gonna grab him and then just drag him out. And it's like, oh, what happened?
That's how we're gonna end the show.
I know.
Luckily, I got Zenyatta here to protect me.
We were a week late, Chappie. That was supposed to be the Halloween edition.
Yeah,
we just put the wrong show on. On accident.
Skip had the wrong week. He was supposed to get murdered at the end of the show.
Who's producing the show, right?
Then I got this light that's an orange light. I'm trying to change the bulb. I brought a candle over. It's getting darker and darker. My niece just showed up. She's waving to me. I can barely see her. I feel like I'm in a tent. I feel like I'm still camping.
I didn't know if that was Janie or Jamie Lee Curtis who walked by earlier.
Michael Myers is around the corner.
Who do you like in here as we go off the rails? Is Society? It's like Menace to Society. Who George is Society Lone Speed, or you like somebody else in here? I like Malathat, who's 3 for 3 at Keeneland, by the way.
I like Clairiere an awful lot in here. We know what Society's going to do. Asmussen's got 2 in. This horse has only lost once, but it's going to the lead. And, these jockeys, they read the racing forms. And with Search Results, Pratt's, that going into that first turn, they're all going to be jockeying for position, as they do in every race. It's not like I'm telling somebody that, I don't know they don't know, whatever. I can't even explain it.
Let's kind of use it as an example, right? Because the 2 races that we can use that are kind of comparable to this were the races against Latruska, where Latruska was like the Lone Speed. And in both of those races, Search Results did all the dirty work, put all the pressure. And I genuinely feel bad for Search Results in both of those races. Because if you look, she ran Too Good to Lose twice. She put away Latruska, tried to open up and get the jump, but just couldn't hold off Clairiere and Malathat. It's like a little too much at 1 1/8 miles for her. So I agree. I think she's going to be up, putting at least enough pressure on Society. And like for Society, she's not really had horses like this caliber breathing down her neck before, right?
Yeah, you're right. And all the best of the best are in this race. This is such a good race, but we know what Clairiere is going to do. Clairiere is going to take hold, and it's going to make that run. And I think all these other jocks, Velazquez with Malathat, from the rail, he's going to have to be shoving to kind of get position in there. And I think this Rosario is going to take hold and be making this big run. And I think Clairiere gets him. I love that she's coming in fresh. She looks so good in the Ogden Phipps. I mean, that race was giant. Then she came back in the Chuvie and looked real good. Last time, we know what happened in the gate. Gino already explained it. Throw that race out. This horse is training well. I think Rosario is going to pick him up and lay him down in the stretch. So I like Clairiere an awful lot in here. So
we have an 8-horse field here. Georgie Tuesday loves Society wire to wire. Gino is on Clairiere, correct?
Yep.
Freddie Krueger likes Clairiere as well, and I'm on Malathat. So
it's funny. Nobody's really on Nest, right?
And no one's on Nest.
We're all kind of against Nest.
Yeah. So there you go. All right. Now we get to the. I'm sorry. We get to the Longines Breeders' Cup Turf. So Krueger, let's go back to you here. What are you thinking in this Grade 1? Looks like a wide open race. Any thoughts here?
This is a wide open race. And with me singling modern games, I'm going to be spreading here. I'm using all the Euros. I'm not, Rebel Romance has won 4 in a row, actually, and looked very impressive doing it. But I'm not at 3-1. I think some of the other Euros have just as good a shot as he does. So I'm spreading here. I tell you what, I'm going to use. I'm using Masterpiece, who's 1-for-1 over the Keeneland surface. Michael McCarthy ships this horse over there. 2 back, and the Eddie Reed ran giant. Last time I needed her for everything, or him for everything, and got beat a lip by Gold Phoenix at 20-1. That's going to be on my ticket. Mischief. Everybody talked, or Mischief. How do you say it, Gino?
Mischief.
Mischief. There you go. I can't even pronounce horse's name. I keep thinking Michael Myers is going to pop behind me. But this horse, everybody was talking about this was the horse to beat early. It's kind of that last race in the Arctic Triumph, which doesn't matter. It ran terrible. But how many times have we seen that where horses, are favored or one of the top horses in the Arctic Triumph, they don't run good. They ship over here for this race and they end up winning the race at a price.
Skip, I want to add a little to your point, because someone that I was talking to this week made a really great point about exactly what you're saying. They said, that race is so tough to win because it's such a big field. And if you look at the way the race was this year with the style, the way the track came up and the weather and everything, it takes so much out of you when you run well in that race that generally the horses who run well in here in that don't run well if they come over here. It's the horses who kind of just pack it in and they don't even really fire. They come back. It didn't take a whole lot out of them. And they actually run a little bit better than you would expect. And they're usually better odds because they have that last race there that's kind of a clunker. So I think that was a really good point that someone had mentioned, with you see horses that didn't run as well in the arc perform better than horses that actually might have run well in the arc.
Right. So those I'm spreading in this race, but those are going to be on every ticket, and I'm even going to hit the all button on one. I'm hoping that something kind of wild and crazy happens in this one, and we'll see what I Rebel Romance, maybe it wins again. I just, at 3-1, I'm against that one. I think this is a much, much tougher race than that.
Skip's bringing out the machete and going all here. What are you thinking about, Gino, here in the Breeders' Cup here? It looks wide open. Are you using any of the U.S. or is it all Euros like they dominated today?
I don't know. No, I will use one of the U.S. because, again, this isn't the strongest renewal of the Breeders' Cup turf. And I think that's really why a horse like Miss Shrift really makes sense, because Miss Shrift's A game would have crushed this group. Miss Shrift, if you didn't look up at the earnings, has earned $15 million.
Yeah, I was just going to mention
Shrift won the Saudi Cup on dirt last year, and then in the following race, won the Dubai Golden Shima on the turf, going along in back-to-back races, 2 of the most difficult, prestigious races and richest races in the entire world in back-to-back. But if you look at Miss Shrift's races last year, he's not far off what he was running in those races, 2 starts and 3 starts back. He just didn't really fire in the arc. Just put a line through that arc race. Didn't love the turf, the style of the course, everything. But even 2 starts back in the Irish Champions when he was 4th that day, even 2nd in the Juddmonte, those races would be really competitive in here. Those same exact efforts. So I think he really fits very well in this spot. What's nice about Broom is Broom's come over here already and run well. He was your runner-up in the Breeders' Cup turf last year. And then Broom went over in the Sword Dancer, ran 4th. Broom was also in the arc last time out. He ran 8th. But if Gouffo was in this race, Gouffo would have been one of the top contenders for sure. Right? He absolutely would have been probably 5-1 sub. So I think Broom is probably a player. And I agreed with Skip. Rebels Romance has excellent form. The races in Germany aren't quite as strong overall. Now, does that mean he can't come over here and win? No, absolutely not. But he's not quite as proven. His resume isn't quite as good, even though you see a couple Group 1s. They're not as strong as some of the other Group 1s that the other European or international horses have. But this is a fantastic chance for Warlike Goddess, Chappie, too. It is, because it's not that strong of a field. And she ran great last year in the Breeders' Cup. Her only defeat this year was she didn't have the greatest of trips. They waited a little too long for her. She was in some traffic. She should have won that race. It's not a strong race. Honestly, there's not like 4 or 5 European shippers that are all in excellent form. So she's got a legitimate shot. Those will be the horses that I use in a lot of my exotics.
And I was going to ask you about that horse. She's 2 for 2 at Keeneland, which we would talk about, the kind of horse for course. Speaking of Gufo, George, who do you like in this race?
Well, after Society crushes and I have a fortune to bet on in this race, I'm going to be spreading around a little bit. You know, I initially like Rebels Romance, comes in with the strongest thoroughgraph numbers, ran a 2 4 times in a row, and has won in Great Britain, has won in Dubai, has won in Germany, has won everywhere in the world. So why can't this one win here? Now, the only thing that gives me cause for pause is has won 8 times out of 11, has earned like $800,000. Mishrift, who's the other one I like, is 0 for 6 in 2022 and has won as much money as Rebels Romance and being 0 for 6. So Mishriff is just a beast. Last race, just against Alpinista, as you mentioned, it was the L'Arc de Triomphe. John Gostin is a wonderful trainer. The prior 2 races, he ran a 2 back, he ran a 0. He's got the best overall numbers. So 6-1, Mishriff and Rebels Romance. After I make a lot of money at Society, I might eat at Applebee's or you gosh, then I'll have some money.
Cappy, one more thing about Rebels Romance that I didn't bring up that I wanted to. William Buick rides that horse all the time. I know James Doyle won 2 back on it, but William Buick ends up on the 7, Nation's Pride. If he thought that highly of the horse, don't you think he would have stuck with Rebels Romance? So that's just another reason why I kind of was against Rebels Romance too. I know that doesn't make a huge difference all the time. Sometimes they have their reasons why they choose horses or whatever, but I think he would have first call on whatever he wanted to ride, and he chose Nation's Pride over Rebels Romance.
Good point. Good point. You can't go wrong driving a Buick, that's for sure. So, all right, we move to the 11th and final, the race we've all been waiting for. I'm going to ask who you guys like. All I hope for the entire day is that Flightline wins by 10-plus lengths, absolutely romps.
Oh.
I think things are going into the afterworld for Skip now.
Look at that.
Oh, wow.
God said, let there be light.
I got scared. I kept thinking I was going to see Michael Myers, so I'm just going to hold this up. I'm sorry.
Okay,
with one race to go. Gino, you were talking about it earlier. They're going to come at this horse from all angles. They're going to go fast early. Flightline, I'm assuming, sits off Life is Good. That's why they run the races, because you never know.
Well, that's the question, right? Do you think it'll be able to be sitting off of Life is Good? Because if you're off of Life is Good, I don't know if you're sitting. You might be chasing. And that is my only issue, right? Has Flightline ever been tested? No, never. Can Flightline maybe pass all of the tests that we're about to ask and like tell me, Gino, at tomorrow after this runs, you look stupid for even asking? Sure. But Flightline, the best horse Flightline has ever faced, I would say, is Country Grammar. Last time out, who Flightline beat. I would say Flightline in this race is facing 4 or 5 horses better than that horse. Probably Epicenter, Life is Good, Taiba, Olympiad, maybe even a Hot Rod Charlie right now. All of them in the same race, and they all do different things. That's my only concern. And normally when we have a horse like a Flightline that wins by 10 plus and earns these monster figures, they're usually like the runoff speed horse. He's not really that, though. He's kind of a little slow out of the gate, and then he sort of sits, and then in the middle of the race, he just sort of like turns it up and just do you think he's going to get that trip in here? That's how I keep playing it out. Because, Hot Rod Charlie is only a couple lengths behind Life is Good when they were racing a few lengths back. Like, these are legitimate horses who are all going to be making him do things he hasn't done. Would I be shocked if he sits and just kicks on? No. But I'm not going to single him in everything and just let it all come down to him. I really can't do that. And I think Life is Good is going to make him work. And I think there are a couple horses who might really benefit from that. And they're 2 3-year-olds that I very much will be using in all of my exotics in this race. And they're Taiba and Epicenter. And I think both of them have enough positional speed to where they won't get completely outrun and they can finish. And if I just am playing it out in my head, how does Flightline get beat? He goes too fast, tries to take on Life is Good. Those two both get a little leg weary, and then the horses sitting right behind them get the jump. That's how I think it is. I like Epicenter a lot. I like Taiba a lot. They're both going to be on all of my tickets. And Hot Rod Charlie's going to be 15 or 20 to 1. Like, look at his prices recently. I don't know if he can win this race. I don't think he's quite as good. He's like never been over 4 to 1 recently at all. And he's going to be a huge price in here. And he's only a couple lengths really behind the best. This is another awesome Breeders' Cup race. And I will be taking a little swing against Flightline because I just think this is going to be a different experience for him in here, dealing with a lot of other horses and kind of fighting it on 2 fronts, from the front and then having to hold off horses from the back.
Yeah, and I don't think he's a runoff, but he's just got such a high cruising speed, and clearly, it wouldn't surprise me to see those two out there going 45 and change for the half, which is going to make it very interesting. George, I'm going to ask you on the numbers. I'm assuming Flightline towers over these horses on the sheets, but you look perplexed. I'm not sure what the look is, but I want to know where you're thinking inside that head.
I mean, it's not even close. It is a monumental difference between Flightline's Thorograph numbers and everybody else's. It's just stellar. Ran a -8 last time. Are you kidding me? This could be one of the fastest horses ever. No question. This one breathes rarefied air. I'm gonna be rooting against myself, because I want Flightline to win. I want Flightline to win. I want to say that we were in the presence of greatness. I think this horse is great. I'm not going to bet a dime on him. I'm going to bet all the money I'm going to bet is going to be putting Taiba on top. I'm going to put Taiba on top. I think Taiba's got the best style to take advantage of any kind of mishap that might happen if Flightline and Life is Good somehow get into a tussle. I love Taiba coming into this race. To me, it's a 1-4-4-1. But again, I'm going to be betting on Taiba to win, because you can't bet any money on Flightline to win. But I'm going to be rooting for Flightline. That's the way I look at this race.
Skipper, what about you? I think Flightline absolutely dominates this race, but there are circumstances, and that's why they run it. And like Gino had said, he doesn't always break very well. They're certainly going to go fast early, and this is certainly a tough field, and everybody's going to have their sights set on Flightline. If you want to make money, you're trying to beat him. My heart and my head says he wins this race. Skip?
Right. As a gambler, we're trying to beat him. As a horse racing fan, we want to see him win. We love these stars. It gets people to the track. They get their followings. California Chrome come to mind. Zenyatta, of course. American Pharaoh. These horses, it's so nice when we get a star like that and everybody comes out. But, on one ticket, I'm going to single. I think he's an absolute freak. I mean, what he did last time and what he's done in his 5-race career. I mean, I don't ever remember a horse, and I'm, not that I've been following it forever, but I've been following it for 40 years. And I've never seen a horse start off his career like this, or her career. Even when Zenyatta would win, she'd barely get up and come from behind. I mean, this horse is just dominated everything. And the one race that it had everything against it, the Metropolitan Mile, I mean, it was on the rail. It broke bad. They race rolled the horse, and it still wins by 6 easy lengths. So we don't know how good this horse is. But On one ticket, I'm going to single. And listen, I put great work. This horse looks like an absolute superstar on the track. He makes everything look so easy. There's two horses I remember training like that. This is one of them, and the other one was American Pharaoh. They just like, they're on the track, they're just gliding, like everything's so smooth, and they're just eating up the ground, and it looks like they're, going slow, and you look up at the time, and it's 58 and change or 59. I mean, it's unbelievable. But I got to use Epicenter on the ticket that I'm going to spread. This 3-year-old's going to get a little weight break, being a 3-year-old, and gosh, man, how do you go wrong with this? This horse, unbelievable. Ran giant in the Kentucky Derby, ran a winning race, only, up against that speed on the turn, and then Rich Strike comes from nowhere on the rail and beats it. I got to use that horse. I think Asmussen could have a good day, and Rosario, I think he's going to have a big day. I'm a big fan of Olympiad. When we were in Vegas doing the show, I was looking for one of the sports books to bet a future book to win the Breeders' Cup Classic on Olympiad. I think Olympiad is that good. 2 back in the Whitney, I don't know what happened. It didn't really look good. And I think I remember Bill Mott saying something going into that race. He wasn't acting himself or whatever. He came back and rebounded in the Jockey Club Gold Cup and won nicely. The distance won't be a problem. I think Olympiad gets the Dreamy Georgie trip with Life is Good and Flightline. I think Olympiad sits right off of those two and gets a great trip. And at 10-1, that horse will be on my ticket. The only other one I'm going to add on my ticket would be Taiba. So on the ticket that I'm going to spread against Flightline, I'm going to use the 1, the 6, and the 7. Those are the only horses that I think that could beat it. I know Life is Good is really good. I still don't know if Life is Good wants to run 1.25 miles, and nobody's going to let Life is Good, especially Flightline, get that lead like he's been getting. In that last race, if you remember, it was kind of weird. Actually, I think it was 2 back where Ortiz kind of put it toward the rail because he thought he felt the horse coming up inside. It just looked like it was getting tired. So I don't know if Life is Good wants to go on 1.25 miles is what I'm saying. Anyways, I was rambling. Now that the lights are on, I feel good again.
He's back. And by the way, we have one horse we haven't mentioned, but shout out to Rich Strike, who actually has lived up to, everybody thought that was just a fluke coming from way back at 1,000,000 to 1. And
he's going to run like 3rd or 4th in this race, but the way it shapes up, because if they go quick early, what's for him, he's going to actually get to run the type of race he wants in this race. Because in those smaller fields, he had to sit up a little closer. He's just going to drop all the way back and then just come running late. And I don't think he can get by everyone in here. I have been very impressed with him. And I thought after the Derby, I didn't even know if he was going to run again after he didn't run in the Preakness. And you know what? The connections made the right call. He's still running right now. And he ran 2 really good races in a row. He loomed up and he took the lead. That race with Hot Rod Charlie was kind of funky because Hot Rod Charlie.
Sonny Leon tried to knock him off playing fullback.
Well, Hot Rod Charlie was sitting second. And the thing about Hot Rod Charlie that's funny, he will never win a race by like open lengths, but he doesn't want to get beat. Right. He will just fight you all the way. He was sitting, and I was like, man, Hot Rod Charlie's going to win by 5. And then he just sort of hung, and he let Rich Strike go by him, and then he fights all the way back and wins. Yeah. It was really funny. He's gritty, but you could see it visually. He waits on horses. Right. He gets the lead. He gets a little bit like, where is everybody out here? I'm used to fighting them. Why is there nobody else out here? He's kind of cool. I think he'll outrun his odds a little bit too, but yeah, Rich Strike kind of gets a trip. Because you're right, Skip. What's funny is that I don't know any person who's saying, I want to play Life is Good in this race, but what if Flightline sits a little farther back and just tracks and he's like 3 lengths off of him? I don't think Life is Good as a 1.25 mile horse, but you're telling me if he got out by 2 or 3 lengths clear, he couldn't get the distance? In his last race, he did not like the track. It was an off racetrack. Just put a line through it. I mean, honestly, like on figures, he regressed, but they didn't look at the times in that race. They didn't really ride him how you have to ride him. They went so slow to the 1/2 mile, it kept the other horses in it. For Life is Good, you want to see 46 and change. Like, that's what you want to see with him right on the front end, kind of cruising.
Right. And Gino, it's funny you say Hot Rod Charlie. It reminds me so much of Silver Charm. Silver Charm was a fighter. It never won by much, but he just had that fighting attitude, and he was going to beat you, but it only was by a nose or a head. And boy, it reminds me a lot of Hot Rod Charlie.
Was it Touch Gold that Silver Charm lost to when the Belmont? He never saw the horse coming way out in the middle of the track.
Right.
Yeah, he would fight you the whole way. That's for sure.
Yeah, and those actually, I got the picture with him in Freehouse, and Gary Stevens signed it for me. But the two Grays would always be fighting it out. I'll never forget that.
Yeah. So, all right. And it's funny. I think it's amazing. Life is Good, who's 9 for 11 lifetime with a second. And I think most people is going to expect Life is Good to finish in the back half of the field than the front half.
Yeah.
And that's how amazing this race is. But I think all of our hearts hope that Flightline wins by open lengths, not just wins this race. So,
and I'm glad it came up like the Distaff did too, in that if Flightline wins, I'm glad that he's going to beat these good horses, because I want to see that, right? That's what we want to see. We want to see the best against the best. And so if it would have been like a field of 5 or 6, and maybe some of these other horses would have said, oh, I'll run in the dirt mile, or I'll go somewhere else, it may have left a little bit of a bad taste in your mouth. But you know what? He wins this race, like, nobody can say anything about it, because he had to deal with all the toughest horses, everyone who deserved to be in the Breeders' Cup, and he put them all away.
If he wins this race, do you think they retire him?
I was going to ask you that next, too.
Yeah.
Because they keep saying they're going to run him.
I don't know.
You could run here, and then what's the Pegasus, right? I mean, like, if you think about sort of the timing or the options, it could be here, and then if he does stay in training even early, there could be Pegasus, Saudi, or Dubai that are on his radar that could be like big money races for him. And then maybe he retires early on in the season. But yeah,
best case scenario, he wins by 10, then he has a light campaign. And next year, this time, we finish with him running his final race at Santa Anita in the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Yeah.
I'd say that's about 40-1, but you never know. The connections do keep saying they're going to run, but let's just hope he wins. But for everybody, hopefully we have a winning day tomorrow. A lot of big races, a lot of opinions, and thanks for all your time. Yeah, go ahead, Jordan.
I do want to say that if I have a really good day Saturday, hopefully Flightline will win. I'm going to eat at least 2 Flightlines on Sunday, because Sunday is Pinktober, where Pink's hot dogs are going to be here. Oh, you were ready.
Look at that.
And we've got a what? You've got a Sluggo dog. You've got a I'll have another dog. And I mentioned on TV today, there's a Flightline dog. And the Flightline dog only has relish, mustard, and ketchup, because he's going to relish the Breeders' Cup Classic. He really can cut the mustard, and nobody's going to catch up.
Well done. That was one of your best, George. I got to say.
Very good. Yeah. Georgie, that should have just been a walk-off. You should have walked right up the – yeah.
Jappy, one more plug. Last 2 days of the Pick'em contest. Saturday, Sunday, $1,000 to the winner, totally free to enter while you're kicking back tomorrow and watching the Breeders' Cup races. Just go to pick'em.santanita.com. Totally free. You don't have to deposit. You don't have to put any credit card in or anything like that. All you do is just create an account, answer the 12 questions. Don't forget about the tiebreaker, and you'll be set. My buddy Eric did it today. He won $1,000. He's got $1,000 coming back to him, which was awesome. So if you're playing these races, get involved Saturday, Sunday, the final 2 days of those, until we get back in about 6 weeks and kick things off again day after Christmas.
And nobody get too tired, because like Georgie just said, you can come back out. Sunday is closing day. First post is noon, because we have the time change, and it's mandatory payouts because it's closing day. So mandatory payouts and all the picks 5, pick 6, and all that stuff. So saves a little bit of your money. Come out. Breast cancer awareness. Even though it's supposed to be October, we moved it to November. You can have some Pink's hot dogs and enjoy it. So for Gino, Georgie Tuesday, and Freddie Krueger, I'm Chappie. Everybody, thanks a lot, you guys. Good luck, and let's win some money. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, Morning Line Sports Show. We'll go over all this again and some picks from – but there's Zenyatta for Zenyatta sleeping on the bed.
And let's see as they hit to the top of the stretch.
She's not moving like a tremendous machine, but it's nice to see her sleeping there.
This was a winner's circle picture, my best day ever. Ravens Pass. That was the winning ticket. Pick 6. Golda Culva was my favorite. It all started with her. So I'm ready to go tomorrow.
I love it. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you again this weekend. Good luck.
Good luck, everybody. See you guys.
Whoops. I hit the wrong button.
See you
He
guys.
just took himself out. I know. Yeah.
We'll talk to you tomorrow, Gino. Looking forward to it, buddy.
Good luck, Skippy.
See you, buddy.